Okay, I'm going to demonstrate a Class I amalgam. You want the amalgam mix to be shiny, but not too wet. You can reach in with your gloved finger and kind of push on it, make sure it's not hard, but that's a good mix. Go ahead and fill both sides of your amalgam carrier. After trying all of your condensers in to make sure that they fit in this prep, you can go ahead and start condensing. So you want to put your amalgam in here. You want to keep pushing down on the plunger and then kind of wipe it off the side of the tooth. Grab the condenser that you already tried in and condense quickly. Use the side of the condenser too to push it up against the walls. And then get the next increment in there. As you're pushing on the distal, you can push and then slide forward and then wipe it off the tooth. So for this second layer, you can still use your smaller condenser to make sure that you are able to condense this amalgam down in the prep properly. And you might think, well, that's enough, but you always have to overfill the prep. So I'm going to put some more in my carrier. Now I'm going to use the larger side of the condenser. And you want to condense this along the cavo surface margin, make sure they're all sealed. So as you're condensing, the mercury is rising to the top, so that's why it gets a little more wet. I'm going to go ahead and put one more layer. And just make sure that you don't leave any amalgam in your carrier. You should be able to hear it squeaking. You might not be able to hear from all the noise from the portable unit I have running here. Okay, so at that point, I made sure that I condensed all around the cavo surface margin. You want to make sure you can use the side of your burnisher at this point, follow this groove here and kind of, push down in a little bit and then come out the lingual groove. You can burnish slightly with your condenser to remove some of your material. So now you can kind of see the outline, okay? You want to get your ball burnisher, your acorn, or that kind of burnisher. We're going to wait for just until we're done with this one. We want to make sure that we push hard down in here with this egg burnisher, making my mesial fossa, central fossa. I'm coming up and over the cavo surface margins to make sure that everything's sealed really well. And now I will grab my acorn, or maybe I won't. I don't have one. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to kind of angle an instrument, putting this in the center. I'm going to push down in. I'm going to come from different directions and make sure I burnish the cavo surface margin. So you come from 3 different directions when you're working on your fossa. Okay, so this is just with the burnishers. And then you're gonna get your carvers. But the burnisher's job is to make sure that everything is smooth along the cavo surface margin and sealed, okay? So at this point, look, I already have some anatomy in there, right? Okay, so now you get your discoid cleoid, and you want to kind of adapt it so that it's going over the cavo surface margin, and make sure that the point is not going any further than your central groove. So see how I'm adapting it and it's going around. I'm still using the side of the carver, going around and around until that's nice and flush. And then I'm going to adjust how I was holding it to start here at the lingual groove and go around very gently, adapting that so that this cavo surface margin's good. Okay, let me get a little bit of suction here. Okay, so you do that same thing around your ridges, very gently. Make sure that you're angled with the point going towards the central groove and not towards the wall that you're carving. Okay, so do you see this area here? It's kind of humped up. That's what I want. I want that there. That's the transverse ridge. Okay, I didn't want to carve from here to here really hard and wipe that transverse ridge out. So when I was using this, I kind of was gentle as I was going up and over that. And that was formed by me putting the fossas in, removing and pushing the material down here and kind of just smoothing it lightly here. Okay, so you want to work from the groove. You want to make sure that your, this buckle groove goes down and it meets in the central fossa right here, okay? And the way this works is you never want to hold it straight up and down. You always want to have this adapted to the tooth and carve from tooth to filling. Tooth to filling. So what I'm doing now is that transverse ridge looked really good, but I need to have a central groove going through there, because if the transverse ridge is too high, then the patient's going to bite on it. We don't want that. You can use your discoid to make sure that your cavo surface margins are good. See how I'm doing 3 different angles here? All right, so see the depth here. This instrument goes down in and then up, and then I want this to go down in. Many times the students won't remove enough material from this central area. So if you have more to remove, you can go kind of in one area and just keep carving like this over and over until you get that gone. And then you change direction and you carve this way. Notice I'm not carving the whole way through because I want to keep my transverse ridge. So if you need this side deeper, you do the same thing. What I'm doing is kind of carving as though I'm carving each triangular ridge separately. And if you keep going over and over and over, it'll shave it down. You don't want to like dig the instrument in and then swoop, because then you're going to craft your restoration. Okay, so I'm going to take a smaller ball burnisher right now. And the one thing you never want to do is just go straight over across like this, because you'll remove all of the anatomy that you put in there. You can go up and down and kind of, make sure that your margins are nice and smooth. So it's to the point where it's, setting up, and that's why it's getting really shiny. When it starts setting up, it's a little more difficult to carve. Sometimes a lot more difficult to carve. Okay. So then you can give it one last rinse. Check the occlusion. If you have red articulating paper, I suggest you use that because it shows a whole lot nicer with the red, but I'm going to use blue here. First thing I'm going to do is just close very lightly and kind of pull and see if there's any marks anywhere. So I'm going to look for real heavy blue marks. I'm not seeing any. So now that I know that the patient's not hitting really high on this filling, I'm going to go ahead and have the patient tap, tap, tap. Check it again. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So now I'm going to have the patient go, front to back, side to side, and then check it again. Okay, I see a little tiny bit of a mark right here. I don't know if you can see that. Right here. Oh no, this is really clear. There, got clear. So I'm just going to go over that cavo surface margin a little bit there. Notice I'm not coming like this and carving. Adapt, no matter what angle you have, to have the filling on half of that instrument and tooth on the other half. So no matter what angle, you always want tooth and filling on there, okay? Okay, so you never want to polish it, you do your final polish before you check the occlusion. You want to make sure that it's hitting properly everywhere. And then once you do your final polish, want to be careful, like I said, not to go over and over and over one area, because it's not completely set up for 24 hours. So even though it feels hard to carve, you could still burnish it down in. Okay. Now you're welcome to use cotton roll to wipe that off, or a 2x2 gauze to wipe that off. So when you're finished, you should have distal marginal ridge. It should go down into the distal triangular fossa, up and over a transverse, down into your central fossa, up and over a transverse into your mesial fossa. And might I add that you have equal material from all directions. You know, I did not carve towards any of the walls, because that would have left me with a straight up and down, you know, wall here with the amalgam filling, and then more on some of the other walls. So the wall that's straight up and down is going to be weaker. It's going to have less material there. Okay. Thank you. Good luck.